Alrighty, everybody. Thank you for joining Encounter News today. I have a fellow Canadian. I've interviewed another Canadian this morning. So it's like all the Canadians here at NRB. But Chris, known as Billboard Chris, that's who you're known as. You had this novel idea to hold up a billboard in public. Why is that? It's like the most novel of concepts and yet simplistic at the same time.
I mean, normally people wearing signs outside are preaching about the end of the world coming or something.
It's true.
But I have this nickname, Billboard Chris, because I decided 4.5 years ago to quit my career and raise awareness about what I consider to be the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine. This crazy practice of trying to change the sex of children with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, surgeries. And so I'm a dad of 2 girls, and I started learning about gender ideology and this child abuse back in 2019.
Okay.
And what happened in the summer of 2020 was a woman put up a billboard, or a poster actually, at a train station in Scotland that said, "I love J.K. Rowling."
Oh, yes.
It lasted 1 day because some people on Twitter complained that it was hateful,
Yes.
even though it had a big red heart on it,
Mm-hmm.
and they took it down. And I've been learning all about this child abuse, and I got tired of our freedom of speech coming under attack. That's a big part of what I'm doing.
Yep.
And you can't even say you love the world's greatest children's author. It's ridiculous. So I put up a big billboard, an actual billboard in Vancouver that said the same thing.
Yeah.
It also lasted just a day.
Yeah.
A Vancouver politician actually said it was hate speech, Sarah Kirby-Young. And they took it down. She pressured Jimmy Patterson's company to take it down.
Really?
Yep.
So interesting to note about that company. My parents, there was a sign put up that was very controversial, and it was one of Katy Perry's signs and slogans from a song, "I Kissed a Girl and I Loved It."
Yeah.
And my parents were like, okay, like we don't believe in that, but we're going to put up, "I Kissed My Husband and I Loved It." And that got so much like pushback, even in conservative Saskatchewan. So I was like, what the heck? But then I saw you do that out in Vancouver, and I was like, wait, we are not the same country. What is going on? So from that point, you started wearing signs.
So right after they took it down, there was a lot of outrage online. I leveraged that outrage into a quick little fundraising campaign, and I put one up in San Francisco, and then Los Angeles, Portland, all throughout Utah, DC, in the metro, and then Times Square.
Yep.
So that was September 2020. But then I'm just a normal guy living out in the suburbs of Vancouver.
Yep.
I've got no platform. I have no media availability or training or anything like that. But I did know I had to start millions of conversations about this subject, because I knew if we started these conversations and started educating people about what was going on, that we would stop it.
Yeah.
And we haven't stopped it yet in Canada. The Premier of Alberta has stopped this for kids under the age of 16,
Right.
which is a start.
Somewhere.
It's a half measure, but it's better than nothing, of course.
Of course.
But here in the U.S., 27 states have now passed legislation to stop this. But yeah, I had some signs made, and I started going outside talking to people.
Yeah.
Because I felt the discourse about this online was not very helpful. It was a lot of, you can't just talk about something and complain.
Right.
You have to offer some positivity, some hope.
Yeah.
And so the positive message is that our children are beautiful just as they are, no drugs or scalpels needed.
Yeah.
And you can't just stay siloed on your social media echo chamber. We have to be in the real world.
Yeah.
So even though I might only talk to 20 or 30 people in a day, I'm being seen by 100,000 more.
Right.
Who drive by, who walk by.
Yep.
And I'm starting all sorts of conversations that I'll never know about.
Yeah.
And people are learning about this. And because they're learning about it, we're putting a stop to it all across the world.
Yep.
And the job is not done yet. The job will be done. The only question is how many kids are going to be harmed before we put a stop to it.
Exactly. And I saw you recently at the White House for an executive order signing. Can you kind of brief us on what happened behind the scenes and why you were actually there?
Yeah, so one of my best friends in this fight is Tiffany Justice, co-founder of Moms for Liberty.
Yep.
She's now working on a parental rights initiative, essentially, for the Heritage Foundation.
Amazing.
But I've made all sorts of friends in the U.S. administration, and I happened to be in D.C. when that was happening. So she reached out to some friends of ours at the White House, and they invited me.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And that's something, a fight that's happening in the U.S. is not allowing real dudes into female spaces and sports. So where does that stand in Canada right now? What are the laws or the lack of laws on that one?
So in 2016, Bill C-16 was passed, which made it a human right not to discriminate against someone based on their gender identity. Now that, for the newcomer to this conversation, that sounds nice.
It does.
And it probably sounds nice to all these politicians who had no idea what they were signing off on.
Yep.
When you say it's illegal to discriminate against someone based on their gender identity, it's illegal to tell a man he can't go into a women's prison. It's illegal to tell a man he can't go into a women's rape shelter. It's illegal to tell a man he can't compete in women's sports.
Yeah.
Of course, we need to discriminate on the basis of sex.
Right.
Not gender identity, because gender identities don't exist.
That's a controversial thing to say nowadays.
Apparently, gender identities are just personalities. We don't have a gender identity. We have a personality, and personalities don't require a sex change.
Yep.
But that's all it is, because when you ask someone what is a gender identity, and I've done this honestly more than anyone in the world because I've had tens of thousands of conversations on the street, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell you. Nobody can tell you what it means for a girl to be a boy. They'll say things like, well, you know, girls like nail polish and long hair and the color pink.
Yep.
I say, okay, so if a boy likes nail polish, does that make him a girl?
Mm-hmm.
Of course not. I had this literal conversation on the boardwalk in New Jersey last year.
Yeah.
And the woman got all befuddled because she believes she's fighting for this human right, but then she realizes, what is it I actually believe?
Yeah.
So by asking these simple questions, it really stymies people and they don't know what to say. And the reason they don't know what to say is because there is no foundation to this. It's all lies.
There's a lot of talking points that people have just heard.
That's
read on. That's so interesting because I often see on like the online space, kind of like you were saying, it's like there's profit to this, but until you actually talk with people on the ground, it's about changing hearts. So what is maybe one or two examples, maybe stories of you interacting with someone where they had like an aha moment where they were like, oh, guys, I've changed my opinion on this.
Yeah, so my primary objective is not actually to change hearts and minds. My primary objective is to create awareness with people who don't know.
Right.
Because the leftists who are very antagonistic, when someone comes up to you and they're wanting to just hate on you or argue with you or get aggressive, they're not there to have a conversation.
Right.
But with those people or with the people who are on the fence, there's a couple strategies. You can say something they agree with, obviously something that's truthful.
Yeah.
And the truth is that there's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy.
Mm-hmm.
You can play in the dirt and throw around a football with the boys. You're 100% beautiful girl. That's what you are when you do that. And so all the leftists agree with that statement.
Mm-hmm. Smart.
If you say we shouldn't put kids in some stereotypical box, they all agree with that. Yet they have this blind spot. Now they believe also simultaneously that if a girl defies a girly stereotypes, well, maybe she's trans. So because she defies stereotypes, now we need to block her puberty, give her testosterone, turn her into a lifelong pharmaceutical patient, and cut off her breasts so that she matches the stereotypes of the opposite sex?
Yeah, how does that make sense?
Right. It's like this popular meme. If genitals don't define me, how does cutting them off define me?
Right. It's a good question to ask.
Yes. So you create this cognitive dissonance in these people where there's now two competing ideas going on in their brain. You're confusing them.
Yep.
That's a great result of a conversation with them. Just leave them confused.
Absolutely.
Don't argue with them. There's no point. Say things they agree with.
Yep.
And now you're also saying things they agree with. So now they suddenly don't think you're such a Nazi anymore.
Right.
But now you're also confusing them. They're going to go home and they're going to have to think about this some more.
Yep.
And the only way people ever come out of cults, and I do see this as a cult,
Oh, I totally
they engage in thought-stopping mechanisms. They don't allow themselves to examine the truth. Because if they did examine the truth, they would lose their friends, they would lose their family, their whole social circle.
Yeah.
But the only way they ever come out of a cult is by examining these doubts that they've pushed to the back of their mind themselves. And when they start seeing the truth themselves, that's how they'll eventually come out. So those are strategies. Say things they agree with and ask them questions.
Yeah.
Do the Socratic method. Don't bother trying to argue with them. Just ask them questions. You've got to get them examining their own beliefs.
Yeah.
So that works. And then the rest of the time with normal people, you can just have a normal conversation.
Right. I'm so grateful that I grew up in an era, which wasn't that long ago. Like I'm in my 20s. And I'm like, I love playing in the dirt. I was with my brothers. I was out picking worms and everything. Like I hated dolls, like all the things. And I'm like, thank God I had parents who were aware. Like this is just our daughter. And now I'm one of the most feminine people that all my friends know. So it's like there's a maturity that comes with time and a development that comes with time, but you don't put people in a box, which I appreciate about what you're saying.
And you're a kid. It's more fun to play in the dirt and play with those worms. It's just more fun.
It's just more fun.
To climb trees and get into trouble and whatever.
Absolutely.
It's called being a kid.
It's called being a kid. And that's where it's like you're taking away the innocence of the child.
That's right.
And which is so crazy because I was reading some data that came out about majority of young children who are going trans per se, who are going through these procedures are girls. It's just shocking to me.
Overwhelming majority now.
Why is that?
So historically, before really 2010, this condition known as gender dysphoria,
right,
which is way overdiagnosed. These kids today don't have gender dysphoria. Most of them have autism, or they've been abused, or have sexual abuse, or they're in foster care, or there's anxiety, depression, or their mother has bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. So there's, in a majority of cases, to be exact, in 70% of cases in England, from their own gender clinic, these kids had 5 or more coexisting mental health comorbidities.
5 or more?
Yes, with 70% of the children.
Wow.
So there's always something else going on.
Yeah.
But, oh yes, you asked why it's more girls today. So this used to affect boys. When this affected 1 out of 30,000, it was mostly boys.
Yep.
And the cure for gender dysphoria was puberty.
What a shocker.
The biggest study that was done, 87.8% of the kids grew out of it.
Wow.
Now, we block the cure.
Yeah.
We block puberty.
Yeah.
With drugs. Then we give them the opposite sex's hormones.
Yeah.
So when a child thinks that they were born in the wrong body, that they're supposed to be something they're not, these leftists who are affirming this, they're not affirming a loving position. They're affirming self-hatred. The message they're sending that child is, yes, little one, you are supposed to be something you're not. Can you imagine someone telling that as a little girl? That you were supposed to be a boy?
Like, how do you process and move forward? A child can't process that.
Right. And it's coming from the most trusted figures in your life. Your parent, your school teacher.
Wow.
Your counselor. All the counselors affirm this.
The people supposed to protect you.
The doctors at the hospital, at the gender clinic. So you have these innocent but naive parents sometimes whose own children have been caught up in this. A lot of parents are pushing this, but not all of them.
Right.
And the ones who aren't pushing it, well, like this example of Clementine, a young woman from California. I ran into her at UCLA. She was sexually abused as a child, 7 years old.
Yeah.
She didn't want to become a woman. For her, that's the source of her troubles, being female. So at the age of 12, her school counselor told her, well, maybe you're trans. And she sent her through with the parents to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, where she met the Dr. Johanna Olsen Kennedy, who is nothing but an ideologue. In 1 half-hour appointment, she prescribed her puberty blockers. She separated her from her parents. She told her parents they could have a dead daughter or a live son. So at 12, she started on puberty blockers. At 13, Johanna Olsen Kennedy pushed her onto testosterone. She asked her, you know, are the other boys in your school going through puberty? Yes. Well, you don't want to fall behind, so we'd better start you on testosterone. It wasn't Clementine bringing this up. It was the doctor. And then at 14, the doctor also pushed her to get a double mastectomy because she said we get better results when we do them younger.
Really?
And so her doctors completely failed her because they are cult members pushing this.
Yeah.
And when you look at all these organizations like the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, who write the so-called guidelines, the president is a man who thinks that he's a woman. At Kaiser Permanente, where Chloe Cole had a double mastectomy at 15, the psychiatrist there admits on video they've cut off the breasts of girls as young as 12.
Oh my God.
That psychiatrist is a woman who thinks she's a man. All these people themselves are wrapped up in this cult.
Yeah.
And they're now being tasked with healthcare for other kids caught up in this cult.
Yeah.
We need actual science, not ideology. And ideology is directing these medical bodies right now.
And do you know where that ideology stems from?
This goes back decades, really. I mean, you can read Judith Butler's work. She's still a professor at the university at Berkeley, UC Berkeley in California. They believe that our gender is just a feeling. They essentially believe that we're all performing gender stereotypes, that we're all in drag. You've got long hair, so you're performing the stereotype of being a woman. I've lost a little bit of hair, but I'm performing manly stereotypes. It's totally warped.
Wow.
They believe your gender is just a feeling. But biological reality is not a feeling, it's just a fact. You can't escape it.
Yep.
And it's not loving to lie to people. We just need to get back to reality, and we need to stop being afraid of telling the truth.
Yeah.
Because the truth is love.
Yeah, that is true. Shifting gears just slightly, you have a little bit of a thing going on in Australia.
Yes.
Can you tell the people about what's happening in Australia?
So again, as I mentioned, we have all these ideologues running healthcare.
Yep.
There's a woman in Australia who runs the LGBTQ organization down there, or she's vice president. Her name's Teddy Cook. Okay. She herself says she's a man. She's had a double mastectomy. She's on testosterone. She's got a beard, of course. I don't want to get into all the details because it's probably inappropriate for a podcast, but she posts pictures of her mutilated body. She says trans-identified people have better sex when they're high on illicit drugs. She wants government-funded childhood sex changes. She's posted bestiality.
Oh my gosh.
So naturally, the World Health Organization selected her to join their panel of 20 experts tasked with drafting healthcare policy for kids and adults caught up in this.
I did not know that part.
Yes. So I read this Daily Mail article where it showed some of these pictures as their cover for the article. And I wrote, this woman, yes, she's female. I wrote, yes, she's female because people will assume she's a man.
Right.
Because of the testosterone, the beard, and everything.
Yeah.
Has just been appointed to this panel of 28 people at the WHO. And I wrote, wasn't my nicest tweet in history, but I wrote something like, people who belong in psychiatric wards are writing policy for people who belong in psychiatric wards.
Yep.
This is a psychiatric disorder.
Absolutely.
So that's a technically true tweet. I'm not saying all these kids or whatever belong in psychiatric wards.
Right.
Most of them just need to be told the truth.
Yeah.
But this woman, my gosh, she's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And in Australia, they have an e-safety commissioner. This is a woman whose job is to censor the internet for Australians. She ordered X to take down my post. X refused, but they had to geo-block it in Australia.
Wow.
X forwarded me the takedown notice.
Okay.
I was getting into bed one night, looking at my emails. I saw this. I thought, beautiful. This is perfect. They're just helping me raise awareness. I thought it was great. So I tweeted out the takedown notice. I retweeted the original tweet again.
Yep.
So what I'd forgotten about, I'd completely forgotten about this tweet. Now it's got millions of views. And now we have a court case going on because I filed an appeal down under. And then incredibly, Elon Musk also filed an appeal. So these two appeals that have been joined into one case.
Very cool.
We've got 5 days of court scheduled for my tweet. And really, this is us suing the government for freedom of speech.
Okay.
So it should get a lot of media, especially because X is involved.
Yeah, no kidding.
And hopefully we can set a good precedent for Australians' ability to speak freely.
Wow. So you're kind of doing a double whammy in what you're doing. Like, did you ever expect it to go where it's gone with your work? Like, to take you where, because you were even in Geneva at the UN where you spoke. You've been all over the world at this point.
Yeah, I was just at Davos, out on the street, and someone took my picture of my sign that says "Dad, a human male who protects his kids from gender ideology." And during one of the World Economic Forum sessions for the LGBTQIA plus community, they put my sign up on the big screen in the session, and they talked about me for 3 minutes. And they talked about the backlash to gender ideology.
In a positive, negative way?
Well, they're saying, like, look at all this backlash that's coming. And this man here from Davos, and he specifically said, I don't know who's funding this guy because the hotel rooms are $10,000 a night there. Well, I stayed in Liechtenstein, an hour and a half away, for about $150 a night.
Nice. You're really smart.
And I drove in and back each day.
Yep.
But they know the backlash is coming.
Yeah.
And I always say good things happen when you go outside, and that's an example of it. I got them all talking. And on the street, by the way, I got almost unanimous support. There were only 4 or 5 people who had a problem with me. Everyone else agreed. These are businessmen.
Yeah.
They're there to do business. These are people who are 40, 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They don't buy this ideology.
Yeah.
But like everywhere in the world, including at the UN when I spoke, it's a minority pushing this.
No kidding.
And at the UN, for example, I gave this speech. I had 90 seconds, which is tough to get all this out, but I think I did a pretty good job. As I'm leaving the room, a woman turns around and she says, thank you. She mouthed the words to me. And then a man from one of the countries, one of the reps there, he came out. He didn't even know this was happening. He fully supports me. People down in the cafeteria came over to support me. But again, it's a minority at the UN pushing this. And all these other diplomats, 30, 40-year-old diplomats, they just don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
So they don't push back.
Yeah.
But they just need to be educated as well. We need to light that fire in them.
Yeah.
And we will stop this worldwide. But to answer your question, did I expect this? The truthful answer is yes, I did.
You did.
I did. Because I knew I wasn't going to stop. And when you think about it, there's only one place this can lead.
Yeah.
If you just don't stop, events are going to happen. Yes, sometimes people attack me, and that just helps the cause.
Yeah.
But when you don't stop and you know how to message on this properly, and you keep reaching people, and you start traveling the world, there's only one way this can go, which is up. So, honestly, I think it should have grown a lot more quickly than it has. So I hope in a year or two I'm up to 2 or 3 million followers, because then we can start impacting public policy more, because these politicians won't be able to ignore the truth, which they're still trying.
Yeah.
But I'm not stopping till this child abuse stops, so hopefully it just keeps
always
growing.
in this role.
That's right.
Wow. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this. I've seen you at different booths and taking interviews, so I really appreciate you taking the time
Thank you so
to
much.
do this. Where can people follow you?
So I'm on Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, everything basically, at Billboard Chris.
Perfect.
They can donate through my website to support me, but I've also started a nonprofit. We haven't even launched it yet.
Oh.
But it's called We Speak Truth. It's based in the U.S., so it's only tax deductible for Americans. But they can reach out to me, and we can make sure they get their tax deduction. And I've got an incredible board already assembled. I've got a full-time executive director already. So we're going to be doing things all over the world.
Amazing.
To keep fighting back, and hopefully we can get some of these big donors helping us out, because I got a lot of big ideas.
That's incredible. We'll put that all in the description below for this podcast. But thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for all your work.
My pleasure.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
All right.